Hi, everybody. This is Dino Chris from Prehistoric Facts, and this is Prehistoric Facts extra episode number 65. I'm going to be reviewing a book that came out this year, and it's this book called "The Monster's Bones: The Discovery of T-Rex and How It Shook Our World." And this is by author David K. Randall. And David K. Randall's written numerous types of books, mainly onto the true story type of genre. And so what this book is really about, it's more about Barnum Brown. This is pretty much what this book is more likely about Barnum Brown in terms of like from his beginnings, like so pretty much when he was born and all the way towards when the discovery of Tyrannosaurus Rex. Does not go through his entire life. There's another book out there that is mostly about Barnum Brown that I'll have to take a look at some point. It is mostly like a biography about Barnum Brown, but this is kind of like somewhat like a half biography of Barnum Brown. And so this book goes through a lot, and so it kind of talks about like Barnum Brown's beginning. So where did he come from? How did he get started into finding like fossils and also looking at geology, like looking at the rocks, minerals, all that sort of stuff. And so Barnum Brown started out as a farmer. He lived in a farm with his family in Kansas. And so grew up very poor and had a somewhat of more of like a working class life in terms of like working hard to get where you need to go. And so, yeah, and he actually did, as he got older, he was actually really interested into the sciences. And so he was very interested in the sciences. He also had dreams of actually making it into the big city, even though his father wanted him to possibly get into show business because Barnum Brown, his name, Barnum, came from the famous showman named P.T. Barnum. And so because his father was so inspired by P.T. Barnum's show and the showmanship of like the circus life and also like the different types of people that were in that type of show. And like P.T. Barnum was a very big name in the 1800s in the United States. And so, yeah, so that's why Barnum Brown became Barnum, how he got his name. And so, yeah, and when you actually look at Barnum Brown's early part of when getting into paleontology, he did discover some fossils around his land, and so he was kind of very interested into what life was like in the past, even though he did not come from a great scientific background, but he actually kind of was inspired by finding it. And also when he actually got started in terms of like learning about like finding fossils and looking at the rocks, this was right in the peak of the Bone Wars. And so the Bone Wars with like, O.C. Marsh, Edward Drinker Cope, those two guys were pretty much the big names in paleontology in the United States because they were finding all sorts of like fossils, mainly like reptiles, mammals, dinosaurs. I mean, you name it. And like there was like so many discoveries that were being found by those two guys. But of course, they did not like each other. And so Barnum really kind of came from was like, I don't need to have a rivalry to be a great scientist, and that's how he actually kind of had that type of career. And also this book does really talk about Henry Fairfield Osborn. And Henry Fairfield Osborn was the curator of the American Museum of Natural History from the late 1800s all the way towards, I believe, the 1930s. And he was a big name in paleontology for a long time. But the thing was about Henry Fairfield Osborn was that he kind of came from a lifestyle of that privileged white guy type of persona, of that he was a big narcissist. He was more akin to like hanging out with people that were more like him. And so he did actually have some pretty controversial opinions uh, in his time. And of course, when you look at compared to today, he was very controversial, very controversial. But he did actually have some pretty good things in paleontology. He did have a little bit of a scientific background, even though hey, he was a curator of the American Museum of Natural History, especially in geology and paleontology. So he does have a scientific background. But the thing is that he was more of that like annoying boss. He was kind of like that the annoying boss to Barnum Brown, even though that Barnum and Henry Fairfield Osborn were kind of like the dynamic duo. Because when we were reading about Barnum Brown and Henry Fairfield Osborn as kids, because I'm in my 30s, and so when I was a kid, as I learned a lot about like Tyrannosaurus Rex, and you actually learned about Tyrannosaurus Rex through like the kids' books, and like in the kids' books they mentioned the name Barnum Brown, they also mentioned the name Henry Fairfield Osborn, and you kind of saw that they did were around at the same time, and they kind of were working together. But the thing is that when you read in this book, is that these two guys had different personalities. Barnum Brown was not that like privileged white guy type of persona. He was more of like somewhat of the nice guy, kind of quiet, kind of wanted to be doing his thing. Whereas Henry Fairfield Osborn, he was more of like, let's get the money. That was the sort of thing. And so when you get to the part where he actually does, where you do get to see Barnum Brown's adventures in like an early part of his career in paleontology, where he was like looking around the American West, even like hanging around in the Appalachian area of the eastern part of the United States, finding fossils. And then when he got to the American West, and so that was like the big battlegrounds to find dinosaur fossils. And so Barnum Brown found some dinosaur fossils. And so he found some like sauropods, he found some hadrosaurs, ceratopsians. And Henry Fairfield Osborn was like, yeah, that's all nice and all, but those were already discovered. Can we actually find something new? And so Henry Fairfield Osborn did send Barnum Brown over to Patagonia, Argentina to find some fossils. Did find fossils, of course, but not to the liking of what Henry Fairfield Osborn was looking for. And so Henry Fairfield Osborn was kind of more of like find me a new specimen. Find me a new specimen. That's what I want. Because at that time there was not really anything associated with like let's find out what these animals were like in actual life, but more of like a competition. It was kind of like a competition back on that point in the late 1800s all the way into the early 1900s. And so the last couple of chapters of this book is where you actually get to see the discovery of Tyrannosaurus Rex. And so, yeah, Barnum Brown was looking for some fossils, and Montana at that point in time in the late 1800s into the early 1900s was not really kind of well known for fossils at that point in time, even though there were fossil discoveries being made. It's just that it was not a very well received place in terms of going to find fossils. And so Barnum Brown and his team of excavators went down to the Hell Creek area in Montana, and so that's where that's where he was looking for some fossils. And this was a dangerous time too, because you had like thieves and all that sorts of stuff, and natives that were living around at that time. And so this was very dangerous at that point in time to find fossils. And so they had to be very wary of where they were. And so Barnum Brown finds a few bones, and he was very surprised of like how different they were compared to other carnivorous dinosaurs. And so the first specimen of Tyrannosaurus Rex, the holotype specimen, is in the Carnegie Museum in Pittsburgh. And so that's where the first Tyrannosaurus Rex fossils is in the Carnegie Museum of Natural History in Pittsburgh. And so that's where they are. And then in 1905, it was like 3 years later, after the first discovery of Tyrannosaurus Rex, that's where Barnum Brown finds his second Tyrannosaurus Rex, because Henry Fairfield Osborn wanted another Tyrannosaurus Rex, and so that's where you kind of see okay, he found a little bit more of a complete specimen, and he brought some of the bones over to the American Museum of Natural History, and those were the bones that were actually going to be on display in the American Museum of Natural History. So that's why in this book, where you see, especially in the cover, you actually get to see the classic position of a Tyrannosaurus Rex at that point in time in the 1900s. And this position was good all the way until was in the position of the skeleton in the American Museum of Natural History was like this all the way towards the 1980s, and then they had to change it. And so that's because the changes were is that dinosaurs didn't drag their tails on the ground; they held them off the ground, and so on and so forth. But also you get to see, but also in this book you get to learn about Barnum Brown's like personal life, like especially like during the times when he was out excavating, and even like when he was out in public, when he was out into like society, and he met the love of his life at that point in time in the late 1800s into the early 1900s. He married his wife Marion, and Marion actually went along with him in some of the excavations, and she was kind of like part of that team, that excavation team. But even though Henry Fairfield Osborn did not like that, he did not like women being out in the field, because he was not a very nice guy. Henry Fairfield Osborn was not a nice guy. If he was around today, he was considered to be like, you just hang out with your rich buddies and just go on your merry way. We don't need to talk to you, that sort of thing. But you learn a lot about Barnum Brown in this book. You learn about his like personality. You learn about like from his rags to riches type of story, because that's what he was. That's what happened. Is that he went from like this farmer kid all the way over to being in the big city, finding this like probably the discovery of the century in the 1900s, and one of the largest meat-eating dinosaurs of all time, in that at that point in time, in Tyrannosaurus Rex, and of course when the unveiling of the skeleton happened in 1915, that was when he had to be out in public and actually kind of show people the skeleton, what it really meant, and where he found it, and that sort of thing. And yeah, that was actually a pretty big moment for Barnum Brown. But of course, there's another book out there about Barnum Brown that say he actually did have a little bit of a troubled life. Did have, not say trouble, but more of like a very sad lifestyle at that point in time. But he did went off to other types of adventures, and still in the western parts of the United States, even going all the way up to Alberta, Canada, to find more fossils. And Barnum Brown is still considered a legend in paleontology. And there's a couple of pictures in the middle of this, near the middle of this book, that you actually get to look at. Like, I'll show one here for you. Like, here is Barnum Brown, and this is a picture of him around 1915, or actually 1919. Excuse me. This is during 1919, and so this point in time he was kind of in his middle ages, and he was kind of at the top of his field. He was at the top of his field at that point in time, from 1905 all the way to 1920, and he was very, very well respected in his time. But of course, negative side of Barnum Brown was that he did started to copy the lifestyle of what Henry Fairfield Osborn was. Is that he wore nice suits, nice coats to digs, and he didn't even bother to be out in the digs anymore. Wouldn't be part of the digs. He's just like there to observe and all that. And also he didn't take notes. He didn't take very great notes either. So it's like, let my excavators take the notes. I don't need to take the notes, because there are field books of Barnum Brown that just show he was not a very good note taker. It's as simple as that. But anyway, this book is a really nice read. If you're very interested in like Barnum Brown, and then especially like the early date, the discovery of Tyrannosaurus Rex, and all that, this is a book for you. And so if you want a complete biography of Barnum Brown, there's another book out there about Barnum Brown, but yeah, I'll try to find that one at some point and give you a review about that. But this book is really nice. It came out not too long, I think a few months ago. And this is a very, very nice book. How would I rate this book? I'd probably give it like at least a good 4.5 out of 5. I think it's very cool to learn about like a guy that discovered Tyrannosaurus Rex and what his life was, and like in his childhood, going all the way towards becoming the top of his field in paleontology during his time in the 1900s, excuse me. But yeah, and check that book out. Really good read. The book is not too long. It's like throughout the entire story, the entire book, in terms of the story, it's actually 245 pages long. So it's not too long. It's not too big. You can read the acknowledgments and the prologue and all that sorts of stuff if you want to. There's good sources here too to actually check out. And so with a book like this, you need good sources. And so 4.5 out of 5. Go check it out. It's actually a really good book. All right, next week would actually be a Q&A episode, so please send me questions about dinosaurs and other prehistoric life by emailing me at dinochris71@gmail.com, or just go to my Facebook page, Prehistoric Facts of Dino Chris. Like the page, you actually post your questions in the comment section. Please put them in the comment section. Don't put them on messengers for private conversations. So please put your questions on the comment section on the Facebook page, Prehistoric Facts of Dino Chris. And for YouTubers out there, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. According to my analytics, a lot of you guys are checking out my channel are not subscribed yet, so please feel free to subscribe to the channel, and also hit that like button, because that helps out the algorithm and gets this video out to people that are interested in dinosaurs and other prehistoric life. And also stomp on that notification bell to actually get notified of every video that comes out weekly. And so I do weekly videos, and so I don't do like every other day or every day. That's a little bit too tiresome for me. So just weekly videos. And YouTubers out there, feel free to leave your questions in the comment section, because we do read them all. Your questions do mean a lot on those Q&A episodes. You guys are awesome and giving me some great questions, and make sure you keep your questions short to the point. You can also follow me on Instagram at dino.chris.pf. I post pretty cool stuff on there. You can also follow me on Twitter at CSGRALL. It's my Twitter page. I post pretty cool stuff on there as well. Also, take care of the people around you. And also, for your younger people out there, make sure to listen to parents, your teachers, and the guardians. It's the best motivation you can have for good education. It's very important to have a good education. With a good education, you get a good job in the future. That's it for now, and I'll see you guys next week.